Good evening, and beloved everybody. Happy New Year to you all. It's a joy to see all your smiling faces. I pray that this is a beautiful new year for all of us. There's so much destruction in the world. These huge floods in California. Murders here and there. The situation in Ukraine. Our beloved House of Representatives and all the anger and hatred going on. I had a lot of time over Christmas to do some very deep meditation. I had an interesting experience. Last summer, my back was hurting me. It hasn't hurt me for a few years. A number of years ago, I had something called spinal stenosis, where the nerves that move through the openings in the spinal cord were being pinched because the bone had grown to pinch the nerves. So I had the option to do a major surgery here at University of Michigan Hospital. Something like an 18-inch incision on my back and 6 months in a body cast. And there was a danger that they could nick some of the nerves as they did the surgery because it was so tight. They said it probably will be fine, but we can't guarantee. It could leave you paralyzed. Well, clearly, given the option of going to the CASA and having the entities work on me, Dalmanacho said to me, Dalmanacho is just the Portuguese for St. Ignatius de Loyola, who was the, let's call him the lead doctor there in Brazil. For those of you, when I speak about Brazil, who raise your eyebrows and say, oh, John of God. Well, yeah, he did some bad stuff, very bad stuff. But my relationship was never with him, never at all. My relationship was with the brothers and sisters of light who do such beautiful healing there. That relationship continues. It doesn't matter whether I'm in Brazil or here. They're very loving entities who are very well equipped to do healing. So they did, I think, 5 surgeries over 3 years. And when I say surgeries, literal surgery. Although there's no incision, it's all energetic. But somehow they don't. So after each year I came back, I went back to the surgeon at U of M. He looked at the new pictures. He said, well, it's getting better. And finally, after the 3rd year, he said, you're dismissed as a patient. Don't want to see you again. It's all better. He kept looking at me. Where's the incision? How did they do that? But anyhow, my back was truly better for about 4 years. This summer, it started hurting again. In meditation, Dalmanacho came and said, if you will give me 2 weeks, 1 week for the intervention, and a second week just to be quiet afterward, I can work on this again. I said, great, thank you. And he told me to tell him when I had that 2 weeks. Well, I didn't tell him. The weeks went by. I knew I couldn't take 2 weeks off. Then the day after Christmas, I found myself literally knocked out. Those of you who have been to the casa remember what the anesthetic feels like. You're there, you're awake, you're present, and suddenly you're just totally knocked out. So I spent 6 days in bed. I had what seemed like a little bit of a cold, that's all. No fever, no other symptoms, just exhausted. And I probably slept for 22 hours a day for those first 5 or 6 days. But it wasn't sound sleep for 22 hours. I spent a lot of time just lying there in bed with my eyes closed and with a lot of very deep conversation, which I cannot remember the details of, about healing, personal healing, the healing of the world. Different entities speaking to me. Aaron kept promising me, don't worry, you don't have to write it down. We'll fill it in later. Don't try to remember it. Just take it in deeply. Then at the end of 7 days, they did a surgery review. And he said, okay, you can get up now. And suddenly I had energy, but I still was sleeping 14 hours a day, but more energy. And started to write some of it down, to talk to various entities, and more especially Aaron. Looking at the linear and the ultimate level of healing. Healing is something linear. Aaron asked me to go back to my body as in whatever way I could remember it when I was a baby. And try to remember how that body worked, to remember as a very little baby learning to crawl, learning to stand up, and that there was no pain standing up. My muscles were weak. I was a baby. I had to learn how to use those muscles. But there was no pain. Growing into the perfect body. And then he asked me to remember times when I fell and injured myself, and to see how I keep replaying those injuries when I ask my body to do something that's a little challenging. Movements like skiing down a hill and knowing how to do those parallel turns, and yet one bad fall and suddenly as I'm coming to a new turn, the body freezes up instead of flow, because the body remembers how it felt to become injured. And we do that emotionally in the same way. Opening our hearts lovingly to somebody or to situations. And then there are those times where we trusted and the trust was not honored and we were hurt, traumatized. And we come into a new situation. Instead of flowing with that love, we close up. When we close up, the chakras close. The energy can't flow through as it needs to. For us to respond in a totally open way, we can't give our full presence to it. So we limit ourselves. If the chakras are closed and we close up on the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, we close up on these levels. We also close up in terms of our care of the world. So as I was lying there in bed, one of the things Aaron asked me are, what are my own goals in terms of learning to be deeply loving in the world and to support the healing of the world, the healing of the environment, the healing of the hatred in the world? And could I see that if I can't do that for myself, I can't do it for the world? What does it mean to keep myself back, closed in? Am I ready to stop doing that? So this is some of what I was doing there for hours each day, lying in bed, meditating, reflecting on that, doing a small exercises, small and big exercises with Aaron and other entities. Falling asleep, doing it in my sleep, waking up again, doing more of it. It was an interesting 2 weeks because I think I slept an average of, through that whole 2 weeks, probably 15 hours a day. A very little a week time. And yet I realized it was all awake. The whole time I was doing various levels of meditation, just being present. Really stating at a deep level in myself, not, I want to do this. I don't know how many of you read that short letter that came out on Monday. I can do this. Not, I want to, not, I'll try. I can. Coming to that place that knows that we can. Sunday, I channeled the Mother for Remembering Homeless. I still slept most of the day. Monday, up a little bit more. Yesterday and today, my first, I would call them normal days, a long night's sleep and still an hour or two nap. But I'm coming out of this back to myself. My back is strong. It doesn't hurt. My muscles are weak. I'm working on strengthening those muscles because, of course, that's up to me. They can do the work to heal the distortion on a linear level. But unless I'm going to put my energy in to strengthen my body, the body is going to be weak. So I have I've restarted physical therapy. I have all these sheets of physical therapy exercises. And I can become strong. My goal, I help my whole purpose. For 3 years, I've not been able to walk in the woods in the early spring and see the trillium. I can't do it with my walker. I have to be able to use my walking sticks. I can walk in the woods this spring in April and see the beautiful trillium. Maybe some of you who live in Ann Arbor will go and walk there with me. So that's just a bit of background. Aaron will come in now and talk. I just wanted to share with you what I've been experiencing. And a lot of it was also geared to the healing and the ever healed annual workshop that comes January 21st to 28th. I love that workshop. A lot about non-duality. We're going to focus on the supports to linear healing and the supports to opening to the ultimate ever healed. such as joy and gratitude. Knowing my power, trusting my power, claiming my power. We have a good human teaching team and a great spirit teaching team. Aaron, of course, Father John, Dominacho, Yeshua, and Mary, some others. And my colleague John Orr will be doing the meditation part of it. Tavis Taylor doing some of it. Several other people doing different parts of it. My field increase teacher friend Dale Jensen, who I find absolutely wonderful, will be talking about how I find field increase, the practice of field increase, really helps the body to reconnect to its innate balance and clarity. So he's going to be teaching some of it. A student named Lauren is going to be leading one segment of it with I don't know, I'm not experienced in from her, so I don't know how to define it, but some work that she does with light and energy. Others may also participate. What I hope for from all of us is the connection, how we can learn this through our own bodies, and then bring it out into the world and really support the healing of the earth on one level. And the fullest expression of wholeness of the earth, of the environment, of non-hatred, of loving kindness, how we can support this through our own hearts and work. Okay, that's enough from me. So I'm going to just get quiet now and let Aaron come in and speak. My blessings and love to you all. I am Aaron. I love seeing all your beautiful faces here on the screen. It brings me a lot of joy. We used to do this in the living room. Now this Zoom screen has become our living room. And we can literally be scattered throughout the world. I find that important, because it's good to have this clear, loving energy and intention throughout the world. Clustered in one place, that's good. But spreading worldwide, that has more power. A new year. Beings often offer New Year's intentions. For many of you, your intention was clean up your act a bit. To let go of the old habits that were hurtful to you and others. To invite in new habits. But you cannot keep these resolutions if it's only on a bringing level. Barbara spoke up, I can. Think of something that you either resolve to do or would like to do. Not necessarily a physical doing, but a heart opening, a connection, a way of being. As you think about it, can you feel some subtle bit of resistance? Think about it. Barbara said to walk into the woods to see the trillium. And yet, for 3 years, she's been hoping to do that. And each spring, the body is not strong enough to support her walking that. So she says, I can. And yet there's this little bit of contraction. I can. Maybe. I can. I wish I could. I'll try. Can you feel the lessening of energy with I'll try? As distinguished with I can. No, I can't. In her letter last week, Barbara spoke of reading fiction, in which there was a very endearing 5-year-old boy with cerebral palsy and newly an orphan. He had only his mother, and she had died. So he was alone. His mother's will had him living with her best friend, and her best friend loved him, tried to support him, but his mother was gone, and he was only 5 years old. He wore leg braces. He had no father, no extended family. He had not learned to avoid his deeper truth. So when he was asked, shall we take the leg braces off today and see if you can walk across the room? He would say very honestly, I'm not strong enough to do that yet. Or perhaps he would say, yes, I can do that. There was no middle ground. He knew what he could do. He was very self-aware. But when he was able to say, I can do that, he found he could do it. He was such a lovable character because of the honesty, the deep self-knowing and honesty he portrayed. There was no feeling sorry for himself, no trying to please others, just, I can do that. I'd like us to explore together that I can do that energy. I'm going to choose a topic that I think all of you would support. Healing of our earth environment. Are you ready to help support healing of the earth's environment? Or phrased differently, helping the earth express into its ever-perfect form. What happens in you when I say that? Is there a little pulling back? I'll try. I'm not asking for a show of hands here, but I wonder if anybody was able to come to that request with a strong, I can do that. Very hard statement for the adult to make, because you know all the conditions that have to be met in order for you truly to do it. So much old thinking to overcome. old self-doubt, old experiences of failure. Are we ready to heal the earth this year, or phrased differently, to help the earth emerge into a much more healed expression of itself? Are we ready? I can do that. I can do that. Can you feel the difference in energy when you say it that way? I can do that. It takes you past doubt. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to do it fully. It's more in the attitude and energy, the opening of the chakras, the heart open, the presence. I can do that as a way of moving past so many old failures and limiting beliefs. It has to be said with honesty. If you don't feel you can do it, then, as our little boyfriend in the book said, I'm not ready to do that yet. But that will become a goal for me, to be ready to do it. So you might say to me, I'm not ready to do that yet. Well, be honest with yourself. Not, I'll try. You're not really trying if you can't be honest with yourself. There is so much hatred in the earth. Are you ready to try to help this earth come back into its pristine essence of love? Not a place where there was heat and more heat. If you say, yes, I can do that, it means you feel ready to look into your heart at the pockets of fear, prejudice, old limiting beliefs in yourself, and say, I am ready to step past this. I can do that. And then, of course, there must be mindfulness. So each time that limiting belief blocks the progression, you stop and see it. Oh, I was giving way to that limiting beliefs. I do not choose to block the way anymore. So the question might become, am I ready to drop off limiting beliefs? I can do that only with mindfulness, seeing how they emerge, how they block. When we see a limiting belief, I am not good enough, strong, loving enough, wise enough. We can't say, no, I'll fix that. We're not after a linear movement. I want you to wake up to the part of you that knows your innate wisdom, your innate love, your innate power, your innate purity. One of the ways we can come to that are with awareness of beautiful mind states like joy and gratitude. Let's try this then with a simple exercise. I would invite all of you to think of something recent about which you feel truly either grateful or joyful. When I asked Barbara to do this a few days ago, what her mind came to was the enormity of love she felt herself held in through this intervention on her back. She just felt herself enveloped with love, held in love. She felt complete trust of the spirit doctors who were doing this work. It wasn't that maybe they'll be successful, especially because they had been successful in those surgeries 6 or 7 years ago. I put myself in your hands. I relax. I know the body's wholeness is there, and that you can help support it reopen. I can do that. And the feeling of love, joy, and gratitude, in which the chakras were open, so the energy field was full. Without that fullness of energy, it's like a pipe being pinched, a hose being pinched. You have a supply of water, but it can't flow through because the hose is kinked and pinched. That's when you get into, I will try, or maybe I can. Open the hose. Let that energy flow through you. Know the innate wonder of yourself. You don't see yourself as I do. You are amazing beings. Human is such a beautiful life form. You're given free will, and that means the free will to close yourself off and say, I can't. I'm afraid to. I don't want to. I'm too angry to. I'm too hurt to. Or to come back and ask yourself, what do I truly choose? I can do that. I'm going back into an early memory of Barbara's, not that early, but 50 years ago. She was newly moved to Michigan. She had begun to work at a stable out near Jackson, training horses, teaching riding and training horses. So she was training some horses to help them get over their own limiting beliefs about ability to jump. The local hunt club, where people had horses, and sometimes the horses would balk at the sight of a jump or shy away from it, and they would turn the horse over to Barbara to take it over the outdoor course, over different kinds of jumps. Two parts to this story. Once the horse balked in such a way, she was just not completely ready for it, and she went off, injured herself. It took a week or two for the injury to heal. The next time she got on that horse, ready to try it again. As she was approaching the jump, she saw the tension in herself, and immediately, this was before she could consciously hear me, but she knew, I'm stopping the horse. I'm conveying my tension to the horse. Unless I can come to the horse with that, I can do that. We can do that. How is the horse to believe he can do it? So she spent some time just riding around the field, relaxing. jumping over very small jumps, finding the joy of the movement and being one with the horse. As I recall, she actually took off the saddle. So she was bareback and could really feel the horse under her. Feel the movement of the horse cantering around the field. Feel the horse's muscles and strength. Little jumps, maybe 18 inches. Feeling that movement and being one with the horse. We can do that. And the horse picked it up. She started to see that in order to train a horse, she had to, I don't want to say clean her own mind, but overcome the doubts in her own mind and know, yes, we can do that. And then it became a joyful thing. And as I look on this scene, and as I said, of course, I was there with Barbara, but she was not aware of me back 50 years ago. But as I look at this with her, that shift of opening energy, which conveyed itself to the horse, is that any different than your opening energy that can convey itself to the environment? You were, in a sense, riding the environment, present and part of it. If you don't believe that wholeness is real right here in this moment, how can you convey that wholeness to the environment and invite it to express itself? In your life, you are constantly touching both living and inanimate objects. But everything is living in some way. Planting her garden. As Barbara turns over the soil, adds whatever nutrients she might add, and plants the plant. She envisions this little tomato seed growing into a beautiful tomato plant filled with ripe, very nourishing tomatoes. She thanks it and says, yes, picturing, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can become that. Yes, we already are that. It's not really a matter of becoming. It's knowing what you already are. Because on the one level, yes, human life is linear. And on another level, you're already everywhere that you're going to be. As an infant, you were born with that, you were conceived with that innate perfection. And with probably certain DNA weaknesses, genetic weaknesses, through many lifetimes. But they don't limit you. They only limit you if you believe in the limitation. Yes, I can do that. Or, very honest, I'm not ready to do it yet. If you planted the tomato, thinking of all the blights and kind of insect damage and the deer eating the tomato and all of that, why would you bother to plant the tomato? You have to know the wholeness of the plant. You have to know the wholeness of this earth. Through your voice and your heart, yes, We can do that. Yes, we can clear the environment. Yes, we can turn things around. Because this is the power of the human with free will choice. We can do that. Now feel that energy. We can do that. We can change this earth. Really feel it in yourself. Say it aloud or to yourself. We can do that. Not for selfish reasons, but out of love. This is the power of the human. We can do that. We can end hatred, greed, bigotry, and all kinds of negativity on this earth. We can do this. I sometimes invited you to think of what blocks that, and that's a useful reflection. But it's important not to get caught up in this blocks it and I have to fix this and this and this, but to just see, yes, these things block it. And I do not intend to carry these blocks with me anymore. I come back to Barbara with her horse. First of all, it was her livelihood. And she loved doing this. She was at that time teaching sculpture at the university here. And that was part-time work. And then a few days a week, 3 or 4 days a week, she would go out there and work with whatever horse or horses she had been asked to help. And it was such a joy to her to see the horse responding to her positive energy and moving past its own limiting beliefs. And the way the horse would respond with joy, starting to not approach the jump with, but so happy, literally filled with joy because it loved being in motion. She was helping the horse to fulfill its own destiny and its own free will choice. You are helping the earth to fulfill its own destiny and free will choice. This earth was co-created by spirit and everything else to become a realm of radiance and light, of love, of the answer to negative polarity. Think of that. The power of this earth and all sentient beings on the earth as the response of positive polarity to negative polarity. Not to become caught in limiting beliefs. And the earth is able to manifest this through you. Through your own personal practice that I can do that. These pictures we've been seeing. Boulders rolling down hillsides. Rivers and creeks overflowing their boundaries. Earth washed away. Homes being washed away in cars and humans. The destruction. But the earth was co-created with so much love to be a plane of stable change. Change, yes, everything is constantly changing. But stable change, in which nothing is harmed, in which each element of the earth lives up to its potential, its power, the power of the water, air, and earth elements, the power of growing things, the little seedling growing into the immense redwood forest, the movement of earth for eons upon eons that changes a level plain into a mountain. Imagine if Mount Everest, as it was being carved out and built up, said, oh, I can't do that. I can't be that big. We can do that. But it starts with your own personal practice and commitment. I want to bring some attention here to the mingling of the linear and the ultimate. On the ultimate level, you're already perfect. Barbara's spine was already perfect. Barbara and I talked about this a bit during those 2 weeks. She said, Aaron, what are they healing if everything is already perfect? Isn't the distortion some kind of a perfection? I said, the distortion is perfect in its ability to teach you not to get lost in the distortion and to claim it, unless you truly want to live that distortion. And who wants to live a distortion of pain, of fear, of anger forever? Seeing the distortion and recognizing it as a distortion, one immediately can shift to the undistorted. What do I mean by that? There has to be a ever-perfect template for everything. For your body, for your emotions, for the earth, for the tomato plant, for the redwood tree, for the mountain. It will be constantly changing, but that template, that essence, it's that. On the relative level, you hold that in your mind and keep working toward it. But you can work forever and, in a sense, pull back from attaining that perfection because you have some kind of belief that you have to keep working. Have you ever had a moment where you felt totally joyful and content? I think most of you have. It may have been brief, but in that moment, everything was just as it needed to be. And you felt totally at home in the universe. Heart open, expressing your magnificence. the divine plan out of which you took birth, your innate perfection. Energetically, as a human, you really cannot carry that idea constant, or it becomes an idea in this grasp. But if you pay attention, you'll feel those moments when you say, this is it. Slicing the bread, cooking the bacon, slicing the tomato. Here is the perfect BLT. It doesn't get better than this. And then a minute later, the bacon feels a little bit too greasy, or the tomato is a little bit less sweet than you'd like. But you know, there is that innate perfection. And I can trust that innate perfection. I invite it to express. And the important thing here is that moment of joy and gratitude. It's perfect. What is your own innate perfection for your body, for your spirit? The place where you feel totally connected to everything, feel totally in the flow, with joy, with ease. I can do that. It was interesting for Barbara back decades ago, working with horses, because the horse is such an immediate reflection of your own attitude. If the horse balked at a jump and Barbara contracted, approaching it again with fear, he may balk again. Of course, he will balk again. When she circled around, approached the jump and said, yes, we're going to soar over this. Honest, without fear. But it had to be honest. She couldn't say, I'm going to push the fear aside. I know we can do this. And she might have to go back to a 18-inch jump. So it became easy and fluid again. Build up to the 3 and 4 foot jump. We can do this. And honestly, assess both her skill and the horse's skill. We can do this. And it always astonished me, really, to see how the horse responded to Barbara's knowing and trust of it, and to its ability to approach that jump again and again, a little bit higher each time. Barbara not pushing, but inviting it to do its best. The horse developing confidence in itself. And then a joy of movement, so that the whole thing became fun for both of them. We can do this. So all the pollution and environmental disaster in the world, these are, let's call them jumps or hazards. They're real. And the innate perfection is real. You need to start slowly to trust the potential of the world, to meet your invitation to increasingly, literally heal itself and ultimately come back to reflect the innate perfection. To trust the sentient beings of the world, to grow past their fear and negativity, which result in hatred and wars and destruction. No being willingly chooses hatred and destruction unless it feels it has no choice. Again, using this metaphor, if Barbara kept pushing that horse with some fear over a high jump, the horse kept balking. She kept falling off and hurting herself. You couldn't see how this would build up more and more into inability to believe that it could be done. It takes patience and kindness. It takes mindfulness to observe the blocks and a willingness to say, I pull back a bit. I look at mindfully at what's happened. I choose love. I choose my body to be whole and express that wholeness. I choose my heart to be whole and express that wholeness. I choose my world to be whole and express that wholeness. And yes, to know I have the power to make that choice. Because this is what we were given at the start. The innate perfection of everything, which gradually works its way into distortion. So you have the opportunity here to see distortion when it comes up. Contracting, fear, distorting. This is not what I choose. And to remember the perfection. I know athletes are often trained in this way. You give them the baseball bat, and they're not trained to think I can maybe hit it, but to literally, as they get ready to swing, visualize the ball soaring over the far fence. To know it. How can it happen if you can't know it already happened? What holds you back from that no? He loves your question. Okay, Aaron will incorporate. Thank you, Robert. I am Aaron. It's hard to look at the unconditioned because we can't really see it. But many of you in meditation have felt the dissolution of body and ego. Felt yourself yourself shift into an awareness that knew itself to be vast, infinite, part of that infinite ground of being. From that position, there was no personal, ego-driven need or thought. How does it feel? Robert, I know you've experienced this. What is aware there? You're not blacked out. There's some kind of awareness. What is that awareness? It's not you. It's not person. It's a place where you rest in the vastness of a being and the power of light and of love. I am that. There's no sense of limitation. There is no, I want to try. There is the fullest expression of that light and love that is your true being. That expression has intelligence. This is not human intelligence that can study the encyclopedia. This is how can I best phrase it? A divine intelligence, the intelligence that sees how everything relates to everything else, sees all the infinite passageways, and how this leads to that, and this leads to that, literally knows how it all goes together. And it knows if it holds itself in that center of love, everything that expresses out is grounded in that energy of love, is grounded in that light, in that high vibration. Within that vibration, there are no separate beings, no separate things. Everything is seen as related to everything else, so that each thought, each movement, each decision of any aspect of this vastness touches everything else. And there is within that vastness the deep intention to do no harm, to treat every portion of this expression of divinity with reverence and respect. It is this that knows. This doesn't mean you have to be 100% into that space, because many of you have never experienced that deep no. But gradually, as you trust yourself to open into that deepest expression wherein the personal self dissolves and the divine self emerges, you become more and more skilled at moving and speaking from that divine self rather than the ego self, and increasingly able to distinguish which one is speaking at the moment, to back up when it's the ego self speaking and saying, no, that is not the choice, to come back into the divine self. That's the closest I can come to it, Robert. I'd be glad to speak further if it leads you to another question.
I mean, I have this experience. It's not the experience you talked about was like the unconditioned, and I have the experience of something not quite so elevated as what I consider the higher self. So, which is a state where I feel the inner divine awareness, but I also feel uh, a certain sense of identity that I, for myself, I'm not everything, and and so this, I mean, this is how I navigate the world. I could never navigate the world from the unconditioned.
Just stay mindful and watch when the personal self comes. Just saying, hello, personal self. Take a seat and come back to center again and again. Trust your intention to live from this center. Intention precedes the doing. Watch the intention to protect, to armor, to withdraw, and move into the ego. Just note it and say, no, thank you. Take a seat there. No talk. Come back to center. Just keep doing. Gradually it will come. You can't make it happen. It's just ego. But when you rest in that flow, it can happen. For any of you who have played some kind of sport, tennis perhaps, or playing the violin, dance, painting, you understand that experience of being outside the personality self, flowing, the energy flow, and co-creating. Hold that as your intention and stay mindful of when it is truly co-creation and when the ego steps in. And just say, thank you, take a seat, and come back again to center. This is the most beautiful practice. You can just keep doing it without force, without harsh judgment of the self. Even thank yourself that I am slowly evolving into greater ability to reflect that divine center, rather than backing myself off into the ego. Gentle, patient, kind. Thank you. This is why I keep inviting you to practice and practice and practice. Love as the first expression. First, there was just this vastness. Love expressed. Love is the width and warmth of the field. It's the fabric that holds it together. Everything is a love. But then there are dark colors and light tints weaving. There are soft areas and sharp areas. But it's all within the field. And nothing is inharmonious to the field unless for the human with free will, that particular thing, it brings about contraction and separation into this is good and that is bad. When it is seen as this as a potential to create harm, if I let it get away, if I let it build up, I choose not to. I choose not to create those distinctions. It's hard to talk about this because the arising of hatred, for example, has a strong potential to create harm for beings. And yet hatred in itself is just a contracted energy, grounded in the small cell. It's not bad, it's just the outflow of conditions. Greed is just a contracted expression of energy, caught up in the small self and in fear. When we can see these so-called negative expressions arise and not react to them, we cease to give them energy. Then the Akashic field stays open. When the Akashic field contracts, think of threads. Instead of the threads running smoothly, suddenly there's a knot. Because you were holding the knotted energy and giving it the power to become a knot. Otherwise, it's just some subtle distortion of flowing. This is why your Vipassana practice is so powerful. Because when something arises that is known as unpleasant, and out of that unpleasantness, there's a contraction, and the contraction is seen as a contraction and immediately releases. The Akashic field stays open. There is no rebound energy that changes the flow of things and can create something hurtful. Notice the contraction. You can just take a deeper breath and say, this is not my intention, and come back to what is your intention. Use a situation in which there is some part of the body that is expressing distortion. A bad headache or a broken limb. This happened as a result of conditions. It is not my intention to perpetuate this. And right there with meditation, you can begin to visualize the ever perfect where there is no headache, broken bone. This is not going to heal it immediately. It could, but probably you're not yet ready to invite it to heal immediately. But it sets the movement in motion. It sets the action in motion, where that which was distorted releases the distortion and opens back into the ever perfect. Because you're not holding it with fear, trying to fix it, but simply resting in the knowing of it as perfect. And that perfection sometimes involves the broken bone. What is the broken bone teaching? Barbara was reflecting earlier today on, you've probably heard from Ram Dass the words, my stroke of grace, is how we referred to a stroke. And she had the opportunity, sometime 20 or more years ago, to spend some time with Ram Dass, just the two of them, and talking about this. When I say the two of them, there was an interpreter there for Barbara. There was an assistant there for Ram Dass, but it was a discussion between the two of them. Barbara was talking about her deafness, and Ram Dass was talking about a stroke. The stroke was real. It severely limited his physical abilities in the world. Barbara's sudden deafness was real and severely limited some of her abilities in the world. how can you relate to this? Not as, excuse my language, darn it, that happened. I have to fix it. I'm so angry. Or, somewhere in here there is grace. And if I can connect to my trust that there is grace, my knowing that there is grace, and say thank you, this opens the whole Akashic field. Everything becomes available in that spacious thank you. The actual physical ailment may not change, but the way it's experienced changes, and it changes everything. Barbara's definition, Barbara remains deaf. Ram Dass, until his death, remained experiencing the results of that severe stroke. It's the way you carry it in your experience, so that instead of feeling like a curse, it feels like a blessing. The energy of that blessing spreads everywhere. And Ram Dass was so beautifully able to express this as he talked about. He used the terms my stroke of grace and fierce grace. What is fierce grace? Remember, this is just one lifetime. Ram Dass did not have a stroke. Barbara was not dead in other lifetimes, nor will she be in future lifetimes. It's just one lifetime. Keep the perspective about it. What is this offering me to learn? And am I able to take it up on that teaching? Keep my heart open. That's where the I can do that comes in. Sometimes it will lead to actual physical healing. It can. You're not a failure if it doesn't. There is a negative energy. It exists. It's real. There is positive energy. That's real. If you come into a room and everybody is very angry, you can feel the anger in the air. Who knows what was spoken before you entered the room? But you can feel that thick tension in the air. Now, if you're able to come into that room, feel the tension and just stop and breathe. Breathing in, I am aware of the tension. Breathing out, I hold space for the tension. Whatever beings in this room are feeling pain, I offer them love. Not to fix them, but simply because I offer them love. So in a sense, you're becoming an air purifier. Your loving energy is able to change the tension, literally. If you come into a room where there's a strange dog who snarls at you, is expressing a bit of fear. And his own way to react to that fear is to snarl. You don't want to walk right up and pat him. He's liable to bite. But if you sit down a few feet from him, just to talk to him loving, acknowledging, I see you're a bit afraid of me. You don't really want me to be here. It's okay. I love you. You are a good dog. There's nothing bad about snarling at me. I hold space for your fear and your discomfort. talk to the dog for a bit, and gradually he'll lie down and rest his head on his paw and look at you, and the tail will begin to wag. That's all I meant in that quote. With looking at who reacts to difficult situations, as Robert asked, who or what is it that reacts? We can see the personalized self react. We can see the old habit energy react. But mostly we don't take the time to look and say, who is this illusory somebody that's caught up in this network of old reaction, bringing the ox home? The non-duality, self and ox are one. As the self remains a self, and yet the self and the ox are one. There is nothing separate. The Russians destroying in Ukraine, and you are one. The air pollution and the clear, pure energy of the earth are one. But things that do arise from conditions. Our practice is to learn that we already have the ability to respond more open-heartedly to those conditions. Not to say, yes, we invite destruction and bombing. We invite the destruction of the environment. Not to say that. To say, I see that these conditions have led to this. I, as every man, every woman, I, as the heart of love, choose to shift this, knowing I can do that. In the case of the environment, find a plant in your house that has a few blemished leaves and just spend some time loving it. Give it appropriate sunlight and water. Hold it in a loving heart and watch how it changes things, and offer this plant's energy to heal the whole world. Co-create with the plant to do that. When someone has said something to you that brought up anger and pain, note that there is your anger and pain and the other person's anger and pain. This is not about right or wrong. This is about different perspectives. Acknowledge wanting to be right. If the other person is very hateful and destructive and hurting people, you can feel very sure I am right. And yet, this person has their own view. And I invite myself to deeply hear their view. Not to agree with it, to hear it. To keep my heart open with the intention to dissolve oppositionality, to invite deeper hearing and being heard. It's at that point that so much dissension can dissolve. When people feel heard, they often are able to back up and listen. They can't listen until they are heard. And so in this way, we can change the world through our personal choices. but that personal choice is both this human's choice, largely from the human brain and ego, and it's also every man's choice, the choice of love. Excuse me, I could say every woman's choice as well. From the place of love, from the intention to truly listen and hold everything, because I am everything, every man, every woman. In the words of that beautiful prayer, not so much to be heard as to hear. St. Francis prayed. To deeply hear and hold without self-righteousness, with love, and thusly to invite the power of that love to spread out and touch everything. You might ask me, what do I mean by the power of love? Go and talk to that growling dog and see what happens. I love you all. Thank you for giving your time and energy and attention to be with us tonight. I am so deeply encouraged that people are asking these questions. The world, the sentient beings in this world can heal, can reflect the light more fully, as long as you show up asking questions and you're willing to practice with the answers. I love you. I am Aaron. Much love to you. Thanks for being here with us. And I wish you, each of you individually, and our whole earth, a truly blessed 2023. I love you.